Okay, people, I have some remarks to make about the Beat Generation, ancestral to the hippies and yippies and what have you. First off, personally, I can blame Jack Kerouac and company's influence to some extent on for some personal problems of mine that have to do with my parents, because my father got into that a bit too much. Well, any of it's too much. And then a long-term acquaintance of mine who's been a real headache started blithering terms I recognized, and I realized that he was influenced by that. So once again, Jack Kerouac snuck up and bit me on the ass. Anyway, to borrow a line out of Jaws about that problem, the shark swimming up and biting on the ass. Anyway, on both sides of the Atlantic, people were getting kind of weird before the First World War, but the First World War was a great excuse to get mega weird. There were already inclinations towards spiritualism and mysticism and all kinds of garbage, and then when they felt let down and drained and all that, and loved ones had died and they'd been through hell and whatever, and they started turning to this even more. And some didn't go in that direction so much as they just went to taking what was used to be called left bank of Paris down to recent times, but starting in the late 1800s, I think, taking a mainstream or trying to. There was occultic influence involved in the Surrealist movement, the Dadaists, and so forth in their manifestos. And a good case can be made that people of this ilk were actively involved in the death of the Black Dahlia as a peculiarly twisted form of art. The case for that's made by Steve Hodel, Hodel. Enough of that. The founders of the Beat thing, Kerouac and so forth, it's like, and they substantiate their heads up their asses. Now, back for a moment to the upsurge of trouble after World War I think part of it is false teaching to begin with. And we still have this stuff floating around. Angels are little baby cherub, little cherubs are little baby angels. They're actually cupids from pagan whatnot art. A cherub or a cherub is actually a very big, strong, mean, scary thing. That whenever they appeared, the ones that were from God said you had to say, be not afraid. You had to sue the person who saw them in the Bible. And their exact description isn't given, but they seem to have bull-like qualities, at least some of them. Anyway, describing their, perhaps relevant to symbolic of their strength. And then you have this idea of like, everything's hunky-dory because God's a God of love, and then this order and peace and quiet, and angels looking after you, and everything will be okay, and everything's fine. And the Bible doesn't promise that. I mean, there's some things taken out of context in Psalms and elsewhere that ignore the other things where, like Jesus said, in this world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer, I've overcome the world. But we didn't get this kind of teaching, a lot of us. So people with this and some familial background in folk magic or whatever started drifting into spiritualism and what have you, a big upsurge of this and other types of occultism and mystical philosophy garbage and so on after World War I. Means of escaping pain and generating some kind of state of mind that was not necessarily, that might be soothing, but it wasn't necessarily truthful, and it wasn't necessarily and it certainly didn't help that the Protestants had the attitude that there was no hope after death, there's no point praying for the dead. This is a notion that was developed in overreaction to indulgences being run like a racket in Luther's time, but he himself actually did not repudiate prayers for the dead, just said, don't make a big focus on this. And Calvin, I think, was the one, and it was his version of Protestantism that dominated in what's called Low Church in England and throughout most of Protestant thought in America. And I remember reading about some girl who goes to some Buddhist guy, or a convert to Buddhism, homegrown. And she wanted to, like, she had some problem about some guy she was in love with or something, I don't know. Some personal problem. She wanted to be able to put a candle to this Buddha or something, snuck over his place to get some help. Because in their system, they could get help on specific things. And in her system, she couldn't. And she was a church-going Christian. Obviously, we have not been given the right teaching. And taking up the slack of this is these people with a new thought and the mind power and all this stuff. And usually mixed in with heretical notions about Jesus, and the evangelicals have been swamped with the charismatic and the hyper-charismatic up with really serious heresies that trace back to Kenyon, who repackaged totally non-Christian new thought and stuff like that. And basically it's not, and it's like Christian Science was another example of this sort of thing. I mean, it was much more obviously included some obvious heretical notions. But anyway, there's also this attitude that the realm of spirit is all pure and the realm of matter is bad. And even though God created matter, but they try to, they ignore the fall. Somehow or another, everybody's all good and wonderful inside, really, and we ignore the issue of the fall. People talk about, let's smoke marijuana, God gave us the herb of the field. Yeah, that was in Genesis 2. In Genesis 3, there's curse on the land to produce thorns and thistles, and one of these in Hebrew is a fast-growing plant, so obviously it must be an undesirable kind of fast-growing plant. So you got mutations and whatnot going on. And so that's not relevant. I was talking about food anyway. I was talking about smoking stuff and getting high. Now, you have weirdo notions like On the Road, I think, by Kerouac. I haven't read his stuff, but I've heard enough about it. Like, supposedly, according to this friend of mine, America's highway is US 101. Wait a minute. Last I saw, America did not consist strictly of California, Oregon, Washington, and Vancouver. If you want to talk about America's highway, it's going to have to be something that stretches clear across it, and there's more than one that does that. You could try 80, you could try 40. But this is just a load of nonsense, and it unfortunately affected a lot of people. And it's things... People can be affected by something and never even heard of it because they get affected by literature, movies, songs, and individuals in their lives that they meet here and there, or they read about or whatever, TV. And these people and these things were shaped themselves by things that were shaped themselves. They were shaped by some movement or other that they never even heard about. And once something's like mainstream and sort of just there, you don't really pay that much attention and analyze it. Every culture has some things in it that need to be examined, including things that consider themselves so-called Christian cultures, even Orthodox cultures. I wasn't raised Christian. I was exposed to the Bible as a kid. I believed it. I got corrupted in atheism for a while. I was still searching. I got back to Jesus. And over the decades, I've gradually come to a position of six-day creationism. Anyway, all that feels peaceful is not necessarily God. And all that feels energetic and stimulating and enlivening is not necessarily God either.